when billionaire Margaret Whitmore froze at the sight of a waitress's necklace and burst into tears in front of an entire restaurant. Naomi Carter thought the woman had lost her mind. But as Margaret whispered a name that had been buried for 26 years, Naomi realized the piece of worthless jewelry she'd worn since infancy wasn't worthless at all. What she didn't know was that powerful people had spent decades hiding what that necklace represented, and the moment it resurfaced around the neck of an invisible foster kid, it would expose a criminal empire and prove that sometimes the people society forgets are the ones who change everything. Just before we get back to it, I'd love to know where you're watching from today, and if you're enjoying these stories, make sure you're subscribed. The bus lurched to a stop on Fifth Avenue, and Naomi Carter pressed her forehead against the cool window glass. Outside, the morning sun glinted brightly off towers of steel and glass. 20 minutes until her shift started at Bellamy's, the kind of restaurant where a single appetizer cost more than her weekly grocery budget. Her fingers found the necklace at her throat, a habit she'd had for as long as she could remember. The pendant was simple, an oval stone the color of deep water set in tarnished silver. She tried selling it once, years ago, when the foster home ran out of food 3 days before the assistant's check arrived. The pawnbroker called it costume jewelry, maybe worth $10. But Naomi never tried again. The necklace was the only constant in a childhood that had shuffled her through 7 different homes for different schools and more social workers than she could remember. Every time she touched it, something in her chest loosened, just a fraction. It was proof she'd existed before the system found her, even if she had no memory of who'd given it to her. The apartment she'd left that morning was a 4th-floor walk-up in a neighborhood where sirens were the soundtrack to sleep. Mrs. Patterson, her last foster mother and the only one who'd stayed in touch, was dying slowly in the bedroom that smelled of medication and regret. The hospice nurse came twice a week. The bills came daily. Naomi worked double shifts when Bellamy's would give them to her, and still the math never worked out right. She stepped off the bus into the rush of city noise and made her way down the street. Her reflection caught in a store window, a young black woman with tired eyes and careful posture, her server's uniform pressed as neatly as she could manage with an iron that only worked on the highest setting. She tucked a loose braid behind her ear and kept walking. Bellamy's occupied the ground floor of a building that probably cost more per month than Naomi would earn a lifetime. The entrance was all marble and brass, with a doorman who nodded at wealthy patrons and looked through service workers like they were made of air. Naomi used the side entrance to the staff room that smelled of industrial cleaner and old coffee. The kitchen was already in controlled chaos. Line cooks shouted orders, pans clattered. Naomi clocked in, tied her apron, and checked the section assignments. North dining room today, the smaller space usually reserved for business lunches. Carter, the manager, Derek Hoffman, appeared with his tablet. "You're switching sections. Margaret Whitmore just called in a reservation for the private alcove. I'm putting Stevens on it." Naomi felt the familiar tightness in her jaw. Stevens was white, blonde, and her laughter at customer jokes somehow always resulted in better tips. "I can handle the alcove, Derek. It's about presentation. Whitmore brings investors, politicians. I need my best on that table. And I'm not your best." Derek's expression shifted into something that might have been guilt. "Don't make this a thing, Carter. Take the north room. Easy tables." He walked away before she could respond. Naomi touched the necklace and went to check her tables. The lunch rush started with a trickle that became a flood. Naomi moved through her section with practiced efficiency. She was good at her job, better than good. She just rarely got credit for it. She was refilling water glasses when the energy in the restaurant changed. A ripple of attention spread through the dining room. Heads turned. Derek appeared from the kitchen, smoothing his tie. Through the archway, Naomi caught her first glimpse of Margaret Whitmore. The woman moved like she'd been born understanding that rooms would rearrange themselves around her. Late 70s, but with the posture of someone who'd spent a lifetime being listened to. Silver hair, styled perfectly, navy suit with a single strand of pearls. Behind her came 3 men in expensive suits. They moved toward the private alcove where Stevens was already waiting. Naomi turned back to her own tables. Whatever world Margaret Whitmore lived in, it had nothing to do with her. She was clearing plates when Derek appeared, voice urgent. Carter, I need you on the Whitmore table. Steven Speed Bordeaux on my guest. You're up. Derek, I'm in the middle of. Now, Carter, move. Her stomach dropped. She handed off her tray and made her way across the restaurant, very aware of her heartbeat. The alcove was elevated slightly, making it feel like a stage. Margaret Whitmore sat at the head of the table, her back straight, hands folded on the white tablecloth. The three men reviewed documents, talking about quarterly projections. Naomi approached with a water pitcher. Good afternoon. Can I start you with something to drink besides water? One man ordered scotch without making eye contact. The others followed with their drinks. Margaret was reading her phone. Naomi moved around the table, refilling water glasses. She was at Margaret's shoulder when the older woman glanced up, but she didn't speak. Her pale gray eyes locked onto something at Naomi's throat. The necklace. Margaret's face went very still, the kind of stillness that wasn't calm, but rather the moment before an earthquake. Mom, can I get you something to drink? Margaret didn't answer. Her hand began to tremble. The men started to notice. Margaret, you all right? The older woman seemed to come back to herself, but her eyes never left the necklace. When she spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. Where did you get that? The conversations at nearby tables seemed to fade. Naomi's hand instinctively went to the pendant. I'm sorry. That necklace. Where did you get it? The three men had stopped talking entirely. Naomi felt heat rising in her face. It's mine. I've had it since I was a baby. Is there a problem? Margaret's chair scraped back abruptly as she stood. The sound cut through the restaurant like a gunshot. Other diners turned to look. Derek appeared at the edge of the alcove, his face pale. Margaret took a step toward Naomi. When she spoke again, her voice cracked. Foster system? The question was so specific, so impossible, that Naomi felt her breath catch. How did you? You said since you were a baby, which means you don't know who gave it to you. Margaret's eyes were wet now, bright with unshed tears. You were in the foster system. Naomi nodded slowly, her mind racing. This woman somehow knew, somehow understood exactly what that meant. Margaret's hand came up, reaching toward the necklace, but she stopped herself. Her fingers hung in the air between them, trembling badly now. And then she whispered a single word. Evelyn. Before Naomi could process what was happening, Margaret closed the distance and pulled her into an embrace. Not a polite hug, but something desperate and shaking. Naomi stood frozen, her arms at her sides, very aware that every eye in the restaurant was on them. Margaret's shoulders shook with silent sobs. The three men at the table had risen, uncertain, murmuring among themselves. Derek looked like he might faint. When Margaret finally pulled back, her perfect makeup was streaked. She gripped Naomi's shoulders, studying her face with an intensity that made Naomi want to look away. Please, please sit with me, just for a moment. Ma'am, I'm working. I can't. I'll handle it. Margaret looked past Naomi to Derek. You'll allow your employee to sit with me. It wasn't a question. Derek nodded frantically. Of course, Ms. Whitmore. Whatever you need. One of the men leaned forward. Margaret, perhaps this isn't. Michael, please step out. All of you. Give us the room. The men exchanged glances but didn't argue. They gathered their things and moved to the bar. Margaret gestured to the chair beside her own, and after hesitation, Naomi sat. Margaret composed herself, dabbing at her eyes with a cloth napkin. When she looked at Naomi again, some of the raw emotion had been locked away, but her eyes kept drifting back to the necklace. I apologize for that display. I'm sure I've embarrassed you terribly. I'm just confused, ma'am. That necklace. It was custom made 26 years ago. For my daughter. The week before she disappeared. The words settled over Naomi like cold water. She touched the pendant again. That's not possible. This is just costume jewelry. It was never about worth. The stone is real, though not valuable. Aquamarine. My daughter's birthstone. The setting is sterling silver. There's an engraving on the back. Her initials. Idopievu. Naomi fumbled with the clasp. She pulled the necklace off and turned the pendant over. In the light, She could just make out tiny letters etched into the metal. Idopievu. The restaurant noise faded to a dull roar in her ears. She'd touched those initials 1,000 times without really seeing them. I don't understand, Naomi said. Neither do I. Margaret reached out slowly. Naomi handed her the necklace. Margaret cradled it in her palm like something holy and broken. This was made by a jeweler in Manhattan. Very exclusive. The design was unique to our family. Never sold publicly. Never reproduced. Maybe someone copied it. Maybe. No. Evelyn wore this the night she vanished. I saw it around her neck. And then she was gone, and the necklace with her. The police looked for it. It was never found. Until now. Until you. Naomi felt something crumbling inside her. She'd been through this before. Well-meaning social workers who thought they'd found a lead. Rich families who'd lost children and saw her face in a crowd. It always ended the same way. I'm not who you're looking for, Naomi said, her voice harder than she intended. I've been down this road before. People see what they want to see. Then how did you get it? I don't know. It was with me when I entered the system. That's all the records say. A baby girl, approximately 3 months old, left at a hospital with no identification. Just the clothes on my back and a necklace. Margaret was crying again, silent tears tracking down her face. What hospital? I don't remember the name. I was a baby, but there would be records. Files. Sealed. I've tried. Once you're in the system, the past gets locked away. Margaret set the necklace on the table between them. I'm not asking you to be my granddaughter. I know this seems insane, but this necklace, it's the first new piece of information I've had about my daughter in 26 years. Please, just let me help you find out where it came from. Naomi wanted to say no. Every instinct told her to walk away from this woman and her money and her pain. But she looked at Margaret's face, at the desperate hope there, and saw something she recognized. The same hunger for answers that had kept Naomi awake at night for years. One conversation, Naomi said finally, "That's all I'm promising." Margaret nodded. "Thank you. I'll have my assistant arrange everything. You'll be compensated for your time. I don't want money." "Then what do you want?" Naomi picked up the necklace and fastened it back around her throat. The truth, if there is one. Across the restaurant, standing at the bar with his colleagues, a man in a charcoal suit watched the exchange. Richard Whitmore's face showed something colder, something that looked unsettlingly like fear. He pulled out his phone and typed a message with quick, precise movements. The shift ended at 9. Naomi refused Margaret's generous offer for a car, refused a business card, refused everything except the promise to think about it. Derek cornered her in the staff room, eyes bright with excitement. "Do you know what this could mean for you?" Margaret Whitmore takes an interest, doors open. Real doors. "I could get hurt," Naomi interrupted. "I've been here before, Derek. It never ends well." But riding the bus home, she couldn't shake Margaret's face. The recognition had been too immediate to be a mistake. And that necklace apparently had history. She walked the 3 blocks to her building, keys in hand. The neighborhood was relatively safe, but relatively did a lot of work. She kept her head up, aware. Half a block from home, someone called her name. Naomi Carter. A woman stood under the broken streetlight, mid-30s, white, dressed in jeans and a worn leather jacket. She held a reporter's notebook and a phone. "Who's asking?" "Lena Brooks, investigative journalist. I've been staking out Bellamy's trying to get close to Margaret Whitmore, and today I see her have a breakdown over a waitress. Over you. And then I see the necklace." Naomi's hand went to her throat. "How do you know about the necklace?" "I've been researching the Evelyn Whitmore case for 5 years. Every photo, every report. There's exactly one picture of that necklace. From the night Evelyn disappeared." Lena held out her phone. Security camera at a restaurant. The image was grainy, black and white, dated June 15th, 1999. A young woman sat at a table, laughing. She was beautiful, white with dark hair. Around her neck was Naomi's necklace. "That could be any necklace," Naomi said. "The aquamarine, oval setting? The specific silver work?" "No, I had a jeweler analyze this years ago. That's a custom piece. And now you're wearing it. I need to go." "Wait." Lena stepped forward carefully. "You need to understand what you're walking into. The Whitmore case isn't just missing persons. It was shut down too fast. Questions never answered. Evidence disappeared. And now you show up with the one piece everyone assumed was gone forever. What are you saying? Be careful. Don't trust everything Margaret tells you. If you want the real story about that necklace, you might want to talk to someone who doesn't have a family reputation to protect. Lena pulled out a card. Naomi took it to end the conversation. Lena Brooks, investigative journalist, and a number. Think about it. And Naomi? Watch your back. People have gone to a lot of trouble to keep the Evelyn Whitmore story buried. Lena walked away. Naomi stood there, trying to understand how her life had become this complicated in one lunch shift. She locked herself in her apartment, checking the deadbolt twice. Mrs. Patterson was asleep, her breathing audible. Naomi checked on her, adjusted her blankets, then collapsed onto the couch. She pulled out her phone and searched for Evelyn Whitmore. News articles from 1999, missing person reports, society features. Evelyn had been 22 when she vanished, heir to a fortune, deeply unhappy with her family's plans. The official story was simple. Evelyn left the estate one evening, never came back. Her car was found abandoned at a train station. No body, no ransom. The case went cold within months. But Naomi could see hints of friction. Mentions of Evelyn advocating for reforms in family business practices. Friends saying she'd seemed afraid before disappearing. Then the coverage stopped. The Whitmores stopped interviews. The reward was withdrawn. Naomi fell asleep with her phone in hand. Images of Evelyn cycling through her dreams. The next day, Derek pulled her aside. Someone from the Whitmore estate called. They're sending a car tomorrow evening. 6 o'clock. I didn't agree to that. Margaret Whitmore wants something, it happens. She's offering $500 just to have dinner and talk. $500 would cover the hospice nurse for another month. Buy medications. Give her a small buffer. One dinner, she said. Then I'm done. During her break, she found her locker slightly ajar. The lock was fastened, but the door wasn't quite closed. She opened it carefully. Everything was exactly where she'd left it. Street clothes folded, phone charger coiled, emergency 20 in her shoes. Everything was there, including the necklace she always left inside during shifts. It sat on top of her folded shirt, untouched, but someone had been here. The angle of her clothes was wrong. There was a chemical smell, faint like hand sanitizer. She put the necklace on and didn't remove it. The feeling of being watched settled over her. That night, a letter arrived. Hand-delivered, no postage. Heavy cream paper, her name in elegant script. Inside was a handwritten page and a photograph. The letter was from Margaret. Naomi, I know you have every reason to be suspicious, but I'm not asking you to be something you're not. I'm not trying to replace my daughter. I'm enclosing something private. You deserve to know what you're stepping into. The night Evelyn disappeared, she was pregnant. 3 months along. Only me, her doctor, and one nurse knew. She was terrified of what her pregnancy would mean in our world. I handled it wrong. I tried to protect our reputation instead of her. Then she was gone. I don't know if you're connected to my daughter's story, but that necklace is. If there's a chance this leads to understanding what happened, I have to take it. I'm not looking for a granddaughter. I'm looking for the truth. Margaret. The photograph showed a young woman, clearly pregnant despite loose clothing. Evelyn in a garden, hand on her stomach, expression distant and sad. Around her neck was the necklace. A baby. Evelyn had been carrying a baby when she vanished. If it had been born, it would be 25 now. Naomi was 24. The dates didn't match, but they were close. She picked up Lena's card and dialed. It's Naomi Carter. I think we need to talk. They met at a diner far from Naomi's neighborhood. Lena arrived with a worn messenger bag and strong coffee. She slid into the booth and pulled out a battered laptop. Tell me everything. From the beginning. Naomi did. She held nothing back. Lena typed furiously, pulling up files, cross-referencing information. Here's what we know, Lena said finally. Evelyn disappeared June 1999. Pregnant. Baby would have been due November or December. You entered foster care January 2000, approximately 3 months old. The dates are close, not exact. So I'm not her daughter. Maybe not, but you're connected. Look at this. Lena turned her laptop. A scanned document, a hospital record. Whitmore Private Medical Wing. It took me 3 years to get this. Most files from that period are sealed or misfiled. But I found one thing. A birth record December 1999. Baby girl. Mother's name redacted. Attending physician, Dr. Harrison Caldwell, Margaret's personal doctor. Attending nurse, Clara Miles. What happened to the baby? That's the interesting part. Record lists the baby as stillborn, but no death certificate, no burial record, nothing. Naomi felt cold. You think Evelyn's baby died? I think someone wanted people to believe it died. But Clara Miles, the nurse, she disappeared 2 months later. Quit her job, moved, left no address. I tracked her death certificate to Ohio in 2003. Heart failure, but she was only 47. She died poor. If someone paid her for silence, she didn't get much or spend it all. Or she was killed. That's a big jump. You told me to watch my back. Naomi showed Lena the photo Margaret sent. Evelyn was pregnant, wearing my necklace. Then she and the necklace disappeared. Now I have it. Lena stared at the photo. Where did you get this? Margaret sent it. With a letter. Hand-delivered. Yeah, why? Small details matter in investigations. Everything connects eventually. They talked for another hour. Lena shared everything about the Whitmore Empire, the foundation that claimed to help vulnerable populations but seemed opaque about its money. She talked about sealed investigations, witnesses who recanted, journalists threatened with lawsuits. The Whitmores are powerful, Lena said. Not just rich, but connected. They have judges, senators. The kind of power that makes problems disappear. Like daughters. Maybe. Or evidence. Or nurses who know too much. Lena leaned forward. I need to ask you something. Do you want to know the truth, even if it's ugly? Even if it means finding out the family, trying to help you might be why you ended up in foster care? Naomi thought about Mrs. Patterson, dying because decades of work destroyed her body. She thought about every birthday wondering who her parents were. She thought about the necklace's weight, constant, the only proof she'd ever mattered. Yes, she said. Whatever the truth is, I want it. Then we work together. You go to this dinner tomorrow. Let Margaret talk. Pay attention to everything, everyone, every detail. Then report back. We build the case together. Why are you doing this? What's in it for you? Lena's expression hardened. I had a sister. Foster system too. Fell through the cracks. Died at 19. Overdose, officially. But I've always wondered if there was more. If someone with power decided she was inconvenient. This isn't just about Evelyn for me. It's about every girl the system failed. They parted with a plan. Naomi would go to dinner. Ask careful questions. Remember everything. Then call Lena. Naomi rode the bus home, feeling like she stood on the edge of something vast and dark. She wanted to turn back, pretend none of this happened. But she'd touched the truth now, just the barest edge. At home, Mrs. Patterson was awake. You look troubled, baby. Naomi sat on the bed and took her hand. Do you remember when I first came to you? What the social worker said about where I'd been found. Said you were left at the hospital. No note. Just a baby in a pink blanket with a necklace that was probably meant for someone else. What? I think I might have found out where the necklace came from. That's good, isn't it? I'm scared of what knowing might cost. Mrs. Patterson smiled, her face lined with decades of hard living. Everything worth having costs something, Naomi. The only question is whether you're willing to pay. But whatever you decide, remember, you've been strong your whole life. You've survived things that should have broken you. A little truth isn't going to be what takes you down. That night, Naomi lay awake thinking about all the hands the necklace must have passed through. Evelyn's hands first, young and frightened and pregnant. Then someone else's, someone who'd taken it from a missing woman and given it to a baby who wasn't supposed to exist. And now hers. A waitress with no past and a borrowed future, standing at the center of something she didn't understand but couldn't walk away from. Outside, a black SUV idled at the corner. Inside, someone watched her building and made a phone call. The conversation was brief. Follow the girl. Report her movements. If she becomes a problem, let us know. They met at a diner. Lena arrived with a messenger bag and pulled out a laptop. Tell me everything. Naomi did. By the time she finished, Lena was typing furiously, pulling up files. Here's what we know, Lena said. Evelyn disappeared June 1999. Pregnant. Baby would have been due November or December. You entered foster care January 2000, approximately 3 months old. Close, not exact. So, I'm not her daughter. Maybe not, but you're connected. Lena turned her laptop. A scanned hospital record. Whitmore Private Medical Wing. Took me 3 years to get this. Birth record December 1999. Baby girl. Mother's name redacted. Attending physician, Dr. Harrison Caldwell, Margaret's doctor. Attending nurse, Clara Miles. What happened to the baby? Record lists it as stillborn. But no death certificate. No burial record. Nothing. Naomi felt cold. You think Evelyn's baby died? I think someone wanted people to believe it died. Clara Miles? Disappeared 2 months later. Quit. Moved. No forwarding address. I tracked her death certificate to Ohio in 2003. Heart failure at 47. She died poor. Or she was killed. Naomi showed Lena the photo Margaret sent. Evelyn was pregnant. Wearing my necklace. Then both disappeared. Now I have it. Lena stared at the photo. Where did you get this? Margaret sent it. Lena shared everything about the Whitmore empire, the foundation that seemed opaque about its money, sealed investigations, witnesses who recanted, journalists threatened with lawsuits. The Whitmores are powerful, not just rich connected, judges, senators, the kind of power that makes problems disappear. Like daughters, maybe, or evidence, or nurses who know too much. Lena leaned forward. Do you want the truth, even if it's ugly? Even if it means the family trying to help you might be why you ended up in foster care? Naomi thought about Mrs. Patterson, dying because work destroyed her. Every birthday wondering about her parents. The necklace's weight, the only proof she'd mattered. Yes, whatever the truth is, I want it. Then we work together. You go to dinner tomorrow. Let Margaret talk. Pay attention to everything. Then report back. We build the case together. Why are you doing this? Lena's expression hardened. I had a sister. Foster system too. Fell through the cracks, died at 19. Overdose officially. But I've always wondered if there was more. If someone with power decided she was inconvenient. This isn't just about Evelyn for me. It's about every girl the system failed. They parted with a plan. Naomi would go to dinner, ask questions, remember everything, then call Lena. Naomi rode the bus home, feeling like she stood on the edge of something vast and dark. She wanted to turn back, but she'd touched the truth now. At home, Mrs. Patterson was awake. You look troubled, baby. Naomi sat on the bed and took her hand. Do you remember when I first came to you? Where I'd been found. Left at the hospital. No note. Just a baby in a pink blanket with a necklace. What? I think I found out where the necklace came from. That's good, isn't it? I'm scared of what knowing might cost. Mrs. Patterson smiled, her face lined with hard living. Everything worth having costs something. The only question is whether you're willing to pay. But remember, you've been strong your whole life. You've survived things that should have broken you. A little truth isn't going to be what takes you down. That night, Naomi lay awake thinking about all the hands the necklace must have passed through. Evelyn's hands first, young and frightened and pregnant. Then someone else's, someone who'd taken it from a missing woman and given it to a baby who wasn't supposed to exist. And now hers, a waitress with no past, standing at the center of something she didn't understand but couldn't walk away from. Outside, a black SUV idled at the corner. Inside, someone watched her building and made a phone call. The conversation was brief. Follow the girl. Report her movements. If she becomes a problem, let us know. The evening after her long conversation with Lena, Naomi stood outside the Whitmore estate watching a black town car pull up to her building. The driver, an older man in a pressed uniform, stepped out and opened the rear door without a word. This was Margaret's world, where even basic transportation came wrapped in layers of formality and unspoken hierarchy. Naomi climbed into the car, sinking into leather seats that probably cost more than everything she owned. The driver pulled away from her neighborhood, and Naomi watched through tinted windows as her world gave way to tree-lined streets, gated communities, and houses that looked more like museums than homes. The Whitmore estate sat behind iron gates that opened electronically. The driveway curved through manicured gardens, past fountains and sculptures that belonged in galleries. The house itself was a sprawling stone mansion, 3 stories of old money and older secrets. Naomi felt the weight of it as they approached, this physical monument to power she could barely comprehend. Margaret met her at the entrance, dressed more casually than at the restaurant, but still elegant in dark slacks and a cream sweater. Her face softened when she saw Naomi, relief mixing with something that looked like hope. "Thank you for coming. I know this must feel overwhelming." "That's one word for it," Naomi said, stepping into a foyer with marble floors and a chandelier that cast prismatic light across oil paintings of stern-faced ancestors. Margaret led her through corridors lined with photographs. Politicians shaking hands with various Whitmores. Awards ceremonies. Charity galas. Every image a carefully constructed proof of importance and influence. Naomi felt like she was walking through a museum dedicated to a family that had decided their legacy mattered more than their humanity. They climbed a curved staircase to the second floor. Margaret stopped at a door that looked no different from the others, but when she opened it, Naomi understood immediately that this room was different. Frozen. A time capsule. This was Evelyn's bedroom, Margaret said quietly. "I haven't changed anything since she left." Naomi stepped inside. The room was decorated in shades of blue and cream, elegant but youthful. A desk with scattered papers, as if Evelyn had just stepped away for a moment. Bookshelves filled with novels and textbooks. A window seat overlooking the gardens. And on the dresser, a jewelry box standing open and empty. "The necklace was kept there," Margaret said, gesturing to the box. "I gave it to her on her 22nd birthday. She wore it constantly. Said it made her feel grounded when everything else felt chaotic." Naomi moved closer to the jewelry box, running her fingers along its velvet interior. There were indentations where other pieces had rested, but one space was distinctly empty, exactly the size of her pendant. What was Evelyn like? Margaret's expression shifted, softening with memory and pain. Brilliant. Stubborn. She had this fierce sense of justice that made her impossible to control. Her father and I wanted her to take her place in the company, to help manage our foundation work. But Evelyn had other ideas. She wanted to change things from the inside. She started asking uncomfortable questions about where our money came from, where it went. What kind of questions? Margaret moved to the window, looking out at the manicured grounds. The Whitmore fortune was built on real estate development and medical patents. Evelyn discovered some of our partnerships involved land acquisitions that displaced vulnerable communities. She found irregularities in how our foundation distributed charitable funds. She believed we were using philanthropy as a cover for something darker. "Were you?" The question hung in the air. Margaret didn't turn around. "I didn't ask enough questions. I trusted the people my husband put in charge. I signed documents without reading them carefully. And when Evelyn started pushing for transparency, I told her to be quiet, to protect the family name." Is that why she left? I think that's why she was afraid. But I don't think she left by choice. Margaret finally turned, her eyes wet. The night she disappeared, she told me she had proof. Documents that would expose everything. She said she was going to the authorities in the morning. I begged her to reconsider, to think about what it would do to the family. We argued. She left angry, and I never saw her again. Naomi felt a chill run through her. What about the pregnancy? She told me that same night. 3 months along. She wouldn't say who the father was, only that he couldn't be part of the baby's life. She seemed more worried about protecting the child from our family than anything else. You said a doctor and a nurse knew. Dr. Caldwell and Clara Miles. Margaret's eyes sharpened. How do you know those names? I've been asking questions too. Clara Miles disappeared 2 months after Evelyn. She died poor in Ohio 4 years later. The birth record says the baby was stillborn, but there's no death certificate, no burial record, nothing. Margaret moved to Evelyn's desk and opened a locked drawer with a key she pulled from her pocket. Inside was a sealed envelope, yellowed with age. This arrived 6 months after Evelyn vanished. No return address. Postmarked from a town I'd never heard of. She handed the envelope to Naomi. Inside was a single photograph. A newborn baby eyes closed, wrapped in a hospital blanket. On the back, written in shaky handwriting, she lived. She's safe. He would have wanted you to know. Naomi stared at the photo, her hands trembling. This could be any baby, or it could be Evelyn's daughter, or it could be you. I'm the wrong age. By 1 year. Margins of error exist, Naomi. Foster records aren't always accurate, especially for abandoned infants. Before Naomi could respond, footsteps echoed in the hallway. The door opened, and a man entered, mid-40s, handsome in the way of people who'd never had to work for attention. He wore expensive casual clothes and an expression that managed to be welcoming and calculating at once. Mother, you didn't tell me we had a guest. His eyes moved to Naomi, assessing her in a way that made her skin crawl. Richard, this is Naomi Carter. Naomi, my son Richard. Richard Whitmore extended his hand. Naomi shook it, noting his grip was too firm, held too long. The young woman from the restaurant. Mother's been quite preoccupied with you. I asked Naomi here to discuss Evelyn. Margaret said, her tone carrying a warning. Still chasing ghosts, then? Richard moved to the dresser, picking up a framed photo of a younger Evelyn. My sister has been gone for 26 years, Mother. Perhaps it's time to accept that some questions don't have answers. Someone took your sister from this family, Richard. Don't you want to know who? I want you to have peace. This obsession isn't healthy. He set the photo down and turned to Naomi. I'm sure you mean well, Miss Carter, but dredging up painful memories won't bring Evelyn back. It will only cause more harm. To whom? Naomi asked. Richard's smile didn't reach his eyes. To all of us. The past should stay buried, even if it contains the truth. Especially then. Richard moved toward the door. Mother, I need to speak with you privately. Now. Margaret looked between Naomi and her son. Richard, I'm not finished here. It's urgent. Company business. It can't wait. The tension in the room was thick enough to choke on. Margaret touched Naomi's arm. Please, wait here. I'll only be a moment. They left, and Naomi heard their voices in the hallway, raised but muffled. She used the time to examine the room more carefully. The papers on Evelyn's desk were notes about foundation expenditures, questions written in margins about recipient organizations that didn't seem to exist, lists of names with question marks beside them. She pulled out her phone and took photos of everything, working quickly. In a closet, she found boxes of files, more evidence of Evelyn's investigation. She photographed what she could, her heart racing. A sound at the door made her spin around. A young man stood there, late 20s, with Richard's bone structure but kinder eyes. He wore jeans and a sweater that had seen better days, incongruous in this mansion of careful appearances. You're Naomi Carter, he said quietly. I'm Daniel. Son. Are you here to warn me off too? Actually, I'm here to help you. Daniel stepped inside and closed the door. My father doesn't know I'm talking to you. He'd lose it if he found out. But I've been watching you since the restaurant, and I think you might actually be able to do something my grandmother and I can't. Which is? Lena's hands trembled slightly as she took the drive. Where did you get this? Margaret's grandson, Daniel. He said his father has been blocking investigations for years. Richard Whitmore. Lena's expression darkened. I tried to investigate him before. Every time I get close, sources dry up, my editor gets calls from lawyers, or evidence mysteriously becomes unavailable. He's connected in ways that make him almost untouchable. Can you access the footage? Not here. I have a secure location where I do my sensitive work. But first, show me what else you found. Naomi pulled up the photos of Evelyn's notes. Lena studied them, her expression growing more intense with each image. These organizations, the ones Evelyn was questioning, I recognized some of these names. They're shell companies, paper entities that exist only to move money around. Moving it where? That's what I've been trying to figure out for years. The Whitmore Foundation claims to fund medical clinics in underserved areas, housing for displaced families, educational programs. But when you try to visit these places, they either don't exist or they're barely operational. The money goes somewhere else. Lena pulled out her laptop and connected to a secure network through her phone. She accessed files she'd been building over years. Look at this. In 1999, right around the time Evelyn disappeared, the the foundation started a new initiative, private medical facilities, supposedly for low-income families. But the locations are strange, remote places far from major cities. She pulled up a map. Red dots mark facilities across the country, but also internationally. These aren't normal clinics. They're isolated, hard to access, and the patient records are sealed tighter than anything I've ever encountered. What do you think they are? I think they're places where wealthy people can make problems disappear. Unwanted pregnancies, addictions, mental health issues that might embarrass powerful families. I think the Whitmore Foundation created a network of private facilities where people could be sent and forgotten. Naomi felt ice in her stomach. You think that's what happened to Evelyn? I think she found out what these facilities really were and threatened to expose them. And I think Richard Whitmore, who runs the foundation now, had the most to lose if she did. They spent the next hour going through Lena's research. News articles about people who disappeared into private care facilities and never emerged. Families who've been paid off or threatened into silence. A pattern of secrecy and control that stretched back decades. We need to see that security footage, Lena said finally. If it shows what I think it does, we might finally have proof. They drove to Lena's apartment, a cramped third-floor walk-up in a neighborhood that reminded Naomi of her own. Inside was chaos. Every surface covered with papers, photographs, maps. A bulletin board on one wall was a spiderweb of connections, photographs linked with string. Naomi's eyes caught on one photo. Is that Clara Miles? The nurse who was there when Evelyn's baby was born. Yeah, I've been trying to track down anyone who knew her. Most people wouldn't talk, but I found her sister in Ohio last year. She told me Clara came home scared 6 months before she died. Said she'd done something she couldn't take back, that powerful people were watching her. Did she say what she'd done? No, but she left her sister something. A safety deposit box key. I've been trying to get access to that box for 8 months, but it requires family authorization and Clara's sister won't cooperate. She's too afraid. Lena connected the flash drive to her laptop. The screen filled with file names, each marked with dates and locations. She clicked on the one labeled Main Gate Camera, June 15th, 1999. The footage was grainy, black and white, but clear enough. It showed the estate's front entrance. The timestamp read 10:47 p.m. For several minutes, nothing happened. Then a car pulled up to the gate. The driver was visible through the windshield. That's Evelyn. Margaret had shown Naomi enough photos to recognize her. The young woman looked agitated, glancing in her rearview mirror as if checking whether she'd been followed. But the gate didn't open. Instead, figures appeared from the side. 3 men in dark clothing. They surrounded the car. Evelyn tried to reverse, but another vehicle blocked her in from behind. The men pulled her from the car. She fought, clearly visible even in the poor quality footage. One of the men gestured, and they dragged her toward a building off camera. The whole incident took less than 3 minutes. Naomi felt sick. They took her, on her own family's property. Keep watching. An hour later, the footage showed the same men returning to Evelyn's car. They drove it through the gate and disappeared down the road, covering their tracks, making it look like she'd left on her own. Can you identify any of them? Lena paused the footage and zoomed in. The faces were shadowed, hard to make out, but one man turned toward the camera for just a moment. Lena enhanced the image as much as she could. I don't recognize him, but I know someone who might. A former security contractor who worked for the Whitmores in the 90s. He left under mysterious circumstances, refused to talk for years, but maybe with this footage, he'll reconsider. Lena's phone rang. She glanced at the screen and her expression changed. It's my editor. I need to take this. She stepped into another room. Naomi heard her voice rising, then falling into urgent whispers. When she returned, her face was pale. Someone sent my editor a package. Photos of me outside the Whitmore estate. Photos of you and me at the coffee shop. And a note saying if we continue investigating, there will be consequences. They're watching us. They've been watching us. Probably since you left the estate. Lena started disconnecting her laptop, pulling the flash drive. We need to move this investigation offline. No more digital communication. No more public meetings. A sound in the hallway made them both freeze. Footsteps, slow and deliberate, stopping right outside Lena's door. Then silence. Lena moved to the door and looked through the peephole. There's no one there. But when she opened the door, they found a manila envelope on the floor. No markings, no address. Just the envelope. Inside were 3 items. A photograph of Naomi leaving work that morning, a photocopy of Clara Miles' death certificate, and a typed note. The nurse kept her mouth shut. Be smarter than she was. Naomi's hands shook as she read the note. This is a threat. It's more than a threat. It's a promise. Lena pulled out her phone. I'm calling my contact. We need to move faster than I thought. If they're willing to show their hand like this, it means they're getting desperate, or they're getting ready to act. Lena made the call, speaking in low, urgent tones. When she hung up, she grabbed her laptop bag. My contact will meet us in an hour. Neutral location. He says he'll tell us everything he knows, but only if we have proof that what happened to Evelyn wasn't an isolated incident. We have the footage. That's not enough. We need to connect Evelyn's disappearance to the Foundation's facilities. We need to prove there's a pattern. Lena pulled out a file from her desk drawer. I've been tracking disappearances connected to wealthy families for 5 years. Women who threatened to expose secrets, who became inconvenient, who knew too much. 17 cases that all have one thing in common. What? They were all last seen near Whitmore Foundation facilities, or their families received payments from Whitmore shell companies, or both. She spread the files across her desk. Evelyn wasn't the first, and she probably wasn't the last, but she might be the key to exposing all of it. Naomi looked at the faces in the files. Young women, most of them. Different races, different backgrounds, but all sharing the same haunted expressions in their final photographs. All disappeared, all forgotten. And then she saw it. In one file, a photograph of a nurse standing beside a patient. The caption read, Riverdale Care Center, 2001. The nurse wasn't Clara Miles, but Naomi recognized the building behind her. It was in one of Evelyn's photographs, listed as a Whitmore Foundation property. That facility, can we access records from it? Not legally. It's been shut down for years, records sealed by court order. But I know where the building is. It's abandoned now, about 2 hours from here. Then that's where we go. Lena stared at her. Naomi, these people have already threatened us. They've made it clear they're watching. Going to one of their abandoned facilities is exactly what they'd expect us to do. Then they'll be prepared for us to show up in the middle of the night. So we go tomorrow, midday in plain sight. We document everything. And if something happens to us, we make sure the evidence is somewhere safe first. Lena smiled, grim but genuine. Evelyn would have liked you. She had the same reckless courage, or the same stupid stubbornness. In my experience, those are the same thing. They spent the next hour copying files, backing up data, and creating redundant storage of everything they discovered. Lena uploaded encrypted files to secure servers in 3 different countries. She sent sealed packages to trusted contacts with instructions not to open them unless something happened to her. When they were done, it was past midnight. Naomi checked her phone and found 3 missed calls from Derek at the restaurant. She called him back. Carter, where are you? You were supposed to open this morning. She'd completely forgotten about her shift. Derek, I'm sorry. Family emergency. I can't make it. Family emergency? You don't have family. The word stung because they were true, or had been true. But standing in Lena's apartment surrounded by evidence of Evelyn's disappearance, of the women who'd been erased, of Clara Miles who'd died protecting a secret, Naomi felt something shift inside her. I do now, she said, and hung up. Lena looked at her. You know what we're walking into tomorrow, right? If we find something at that facility, if we prove the Whitmores have been disappearing people, they'll come for us. With everything they have. I know, and you're still willing to do this? Naomi touched the necklace at her throat, feeling its familiar weight. Clara Miles died protecting a secret. Evelyn disappeared, trying to expose the truth. I've spent my whole life being invisible, being forgotten, being no one. If I'm going to matter, if my life is going to mean something, it's going to be because I finished what they started. Lena nodded. Then we do this together. No matter what happens. They left the apartment separately, Naomi first, then Lena 10 minutes later. On the street, Naomi noticed the black SUV parked 2 blocks away, the same one that had been outside her building. She didn't acknowledge it, just walked to the bus stop and acted natural. But she texted Lena, "They're following me." The response came immediately. "Good. Let them think we're scared. Tomorrow, we show them what scared people can do." Naomi rode the bus home, very aware of the SUV trailing behind. When she got to her building, she saw a man sitting in a parked car across the street, not even trying to hide anymore. Inside her apartment, Mrs. Patterson was awake, breathing labored. Naomi sat beside her and took her hand. "You're in trouble, aren't you, baby?" "Maybe. Then you be smart. You be careful, but you don't run. Running never saved anyone." Naomi squeezed her hand. "I'm not running. I'm fighting." "Good. That's what I raised you to do." That night, Naomi barely slept. Every sound in the hallway made her tense. Every car passing outside made her heart race. She kept the flash drive in her pocket and the necklace around her throat. Tomorrow, they would go to the abandoned facility. Tomorrow, they would find proof. Tomorrow, everything would change. She just hoped they'd survive it. The morning sun barely cut through gray clouds as Naomi and Lena drove north toward the abandoned Riverdale Care Center. They left the city at dawn, taking back roads and switching vehicles twice. Lena's paranoia proved justified when they spotted the same black SUV after the first switch. "They're not even trying to be subtle anymore," Lena said, checking her mirrors. "That means they're either confident or desperate. Which one worries you more?" "Both." The facility appeared after 2 hours of driving through increasingly rural landscape. Set back from the road behind a rusted fence, the building looked forgotten by time. 3 stories of gray concrete and broken windows, weeds pushing through cracks in the parking lot, a faded sign that once read Riverdale Care Center, a Whitmore Foundation initiative. Lena parked a quarter-mile down the road behind an abandoned gas station. They approached on foot, cameras ready, recording everything. The main gate hung open, the lock long since broken. "County records say this place closed in 2003, Lena said quietly, filming the exterior. "Fire code violations," they claimed. But the inspector who filed that report told me he was instructed what to write. The building was structurally sound. They entered through a side door, hinges screaming. Inside, the air was thick with dust and mold. The lobby had been stripped of furniture, but outlines on the walls showed where things had been. "They cleaned it out," Naomi said, her voice echoing. "Took everything. Not everything. People always miss something." They moved deeper, footsteps crunching on debris. The first floor held empty administrative offices. The second floor was patient rooms, small spaces with barred windows and heavy doors. Naomi felt her chest tighten. These weren't hospital rooms. They were cells. "Lena, look at this." Naomi pointed to scratch marks on one door, deep gouges in the wood. Someone had tried desperately to get out. Lena photographed everything. This wasn't a care facility. This was a prison. On the 3rd floor, they found what they were looking for. A storage room hidden behind a collapsed false wall panel. Inside were boxes of water-damaged files. Patient intake forms without names, only numbers. Medical records documenting sedatives, psychiatric medications, procedures that made Naomi's stomach turn. "They were drugging people," Lena whispered, flipping through documents, "keeping them sedated. Some of these records show patients held for months, even years." Naomi pulled out a file marked 1999-12. Inside were medical charts for patient 847. Intake date, December 15th, 1999. The notes were clinical, detached. Patient admitted following birth complications. Emotional instability. Recommended long-term psychiatric observation. Stapled to the back was a faded, water-stained photograph. A young woman with dark hair and haunted eyes, staring at the camera. Evelyn Whitmore. "Oh my God," Naomi breathed. She was here. Lena grabbed the file, her hands shaking as she photographed every page. "This is proof. They didn't kill her. They imprisoned her. But where is she now?" The facility closed in 2003. They would have moved patients before closing. Lena pulled out her phone and cross-referenced the locations she'd mapped. 3 facilities still operating. Montana, New Mexico, Maine. Remote locations, minimal oversight. A sound from downstairs made them freeze. Footsteps. Multiple people moving through the building with purpose. "We need to go," Lena whispered. "Now." They shoved files into Lena's bag and moved toward the back stairwell. The footsteps were coming up the main stairs, getting closer. They reached the first floor and headed for their exit. Through a broken window, Naomi saw 3 SUVs parked outside, blocking their escape. Men in suits were spreading out around the building, coordinating on radios. "They knew we'd come here," Naomi said. "This was a trap. Then we spring it on our terms." Lena uploaded the photos they'd just taken to her secure server. "Even if they catch us, the evidence is already out there." They heard men entering the 3rd floor above them, voices shouting that someone had been in the storage room. Lena pointed to a basement door. Medical facilities always have multiple exits. Fire codes. There has to be another way out. They descended into darkness, using phone flashlights to navigate. The basement was a maze of mechanical rooms and storage areas, pipes dripping, the smell of decay overwhelming. They found what they were looking for at the far end, a loading dock door. The mechanism was rusted but functional. Lena forced it open, the metal shrieking, and they emerged into an overgrown loading area behind the building. No one was guarding this side. They ran, crashing through brush and weeds, heading for the tree line. Behind them, shouts indicated they'd been spotted. They made it to the trees as the first men rounded the building. Lena kept running, weaving through the forest with practiced ease. Naomi followed, branches whipping at her face, lungs burning. They burst onto a rural road half a mile from where they'd parked. Lena's car was exactly where they'd left it. They threw themselves inside and Lena gunned the engine, tires spitting gravel. In the rearview mirror, Naomi saw the SUVs emerging, giving chase. But Lena knew these roads. She took turns at speed, eventually losing their pursuers on back roads that twisted through farmland. Only when they were sure they'd lost the tail did Lena pull over, hands shaking on the steering wheel. "That was too close. But we got it. We have proof. We have proof they were holding someone in 1999. We need to prove it was Evelyn, and we need to find out where she is now." Lena pulled out her laptop and started sorting through the files they'd photographed. These patient numbers, they must correspond to something. A master list, intake records, something that shows real names. Naomi's phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. "Naomi Carter?" The voice was male, older, uncertain. "Who is this?" "My name is Thomas Wright. I worked security for the Whitmores in the 90s. Lena Brooks contacted me yesterday, saying she had new evidence about Evelyn Whitmore's disappearance. Is that true?" Naomi looked at Lena, who nodded urgently. "Yes. We just found records from Riverdale Care Center. Evelyn was held there." A long silence. Then, "I've been waiting 26 years for someone to find that place. I need to meet with you. Today. There are things I can tell you, things I saw, but not over the phone." "Where?" He gave them an address, a diner 2 hours south of their current location. "Come alone. If I see anyone from the Whitmore organization, I disappear and you never hear from me again." The call ended. Lena was already programming the address into her GPS. This could be it. The missing piece. Or another trap. Only one way to find out. They drove in tense silence, taking a circuitous route and checking constantly for tails. The diner was exactly what Naomi expected. A truck stop off the interstate, the kind of place where everyone minded their own business. Thomas Wright sat in a back booth, a man in his 60s with gray hair and the wary eyes of someone who'd spent years looking over his shoulder. He gestured them over without standing, his hands wrapped around a coffee cup like it was the only warm thing in the world. "You're the girl from the restaurant," he said to Naomi. "I saw the news coverage, saw the necklace. That's when I knew it was time to talk. You recognized it? I was working security the night Evelyn disappeared. I saw her wearing that necklace when they took her." His voice cracked. "I did nothing. I stood there and watched them drag her away, and I did nothing." Lena pulled out her recorder. "Tell us everything." Thomas took a breath. Richard Whitmore ran security for the estate back then. His father was still alive, still technically in charge, but Richard had ambitions. He wanted full control of the company, the foundation, everything. But Evelyn was getting in the way. She discovered that the foundation was being used to funnel money into private facilities that operated outside the law, places where wealthy people could make problems disappear. We found one of those facilities today. Riverdale was the first. Richard's pet project. He convinced his father it was humanitarian, helping people who couldn't afford proper psychiatric care. But really, it was a place to lock people up and throw away the key. Evelyn figured it out. She got access to financial records, patient transfers, everything. She was going to the FBI. So Richard stopped her. He had people watching her for weeks. The night she tried to leave, they were waiting. I was assigned to the gate that night, watching the cameras. I saw it happen. 3 men, Richard's personal security team. They pulled her out of her car, dragged her away. I heard her screaming. Thomas's eyes were wet. I called Richard, asked what was happening. He told me it was family business, that Evelyn was having a breakdown, that they were getting her help. He said if I valued my job, my family's safety, I'd forget what I saw. And you did. For 2 months, I did. Then I started asking questions. Where was Evelyn? When was she coming back? Richard called me into his office and showed me a file. Photos of my daughter at school. My wife at the grocery store. He didn't say anything. He just showed me the photos and asked if I understood. I understood. But you're talking now, Naomi said. Because my daughter's grown now, living across the country with her own family. My wife passed 3 years ago. There's nothing left they can threaten me with except my life. And at this point, I'm more afraid of dying with this secret than dying because I told it. He pulled an envelope from his jacket. After I left the Whitmores, I took something. Insurance, I thought. Security footage from that night, copied onto a personal drive before Richard could wipe the servers. Lena grabbed the envelope. We already have that footage from Daniel Whitmore. No, you have the exterior gate camera. This is from the interior garage, where they took her after. It shows faces. It shows Richard directing everything. It shows them putting Evelyn in a van marked with Riverdale Care Center logos. He leaned forward. That's not all. I kept track of the men who took her. All 3 of them died within 5 years. Car accidents, 1 heart attack, 1 suicide. Convenient. Richard was cleaning up loose ends. And I was supposed to be one of them. Someone tried to run me off the road in 2002. I moved, changed my name, disappeared. But I kept the footage. Kept waiting for the right time. Lena was already viewing the files on the drive, her expression intense. This is incredible. This is direct evidence of kidnapping, false imprisonment, conspiracy. With this and the facility records, we can bury Richard Whitmore. What about Evelyn? Naomi asked. Do you know where she is now? Thomas shook his head. After Riverdale closed, patients were dispersed. But I heard rumors. Stories from other security guys who worked the facilities. There was one woman, been there for years, kept in isolation. They called her the ghost because officially she didn't exist. No name in the system, no family looking for her. She was at a facility in Montana last I heard, but that was years ago. We need to find her. If she's still alive, she's been imprisoned for 26 years. If she's still alive, she's probably not the same person she was. That kind of isolation, that kind of drugging, it changes people. Breaks them. Thomas stood up. I've told you everything I know. What you do with it is up to you. But be careful. Richard Whitmore has killed to protect this secret. He won't stop now. He walked out of the diner without looking back. Naomi and Lena sat in silence, processing everything they just learned. We need to get this to the authorities, Lena finally said. FBI, state police, someone who can act on it. And hope Richard doesn't have them in his pocket too. It's a risk, but we can't storm a private facility ourselves. We need people with badges and warrants. Naomi thought about Evelyn, locked away for 26 years. Drugged, isolated, forgotten. All because she tried to do the right thing. How long will that take? Getting warrants? Organizing a raid? Days? Weeks? Probably weeks, if we're lucky. She's been waiting 26 years. Every day she's in there is because of what I'm wearing around my neck. Naomi touched the necklace. Clara Miles gave this to me for a reason. Maybe not because I was Evelyn's daughter, but because I was meant to finish what Evelyn started. Naomi, you can't seriously be suggesting. I'm suggesting we at least try to confirm she's there before we bring in the authorities. If we're wrong, if she's not at that Montana facility, We've shown our hand for nothing, and Richard will move her somewhere we'll never find her. Lena stared at her for a long moment. You're talking about breaking into a secure private facility to confirm the identity of a patient who's been disappeared for over 2 decades. That's insane. I know. It's also exactly what Evelyn would have done. Lena smiled grimly. Fine. But we do this smart. We gather more information first. Find out everything we can about that Montana facility. Layout, security, staffing. And we make sure the evidence we already have is bulletproof and backed up everywhere. If something happens to us, the truth still comes out. They spent the rest of the day in a motel room, Lena working her contacts, Naomi going through every file they'd collected. The Montana facility was called Mountain View Wellness Center, another Whitmore Foundation property. It had been operating since 2004, right after Riverdale closed. Isolated location in the mountains, minimal staff, maximum security. I've got a contact who worked there briefly as a nurse, Lena said, hanging up her latest call. She quit after 3 months. Said the place gave her nightmares. She's willing to talk. The former nurse, Amanda Phillips, met them at a coffee shop in Billings, Montana. She was in her 40s, nervous, constantly glancing around like she expected someone to be watching. Maybe she was right to be paranoid. I only worked at Mountain View for 12 weeks, Amanda said, her voice barely above a whisper. That was enough. That place, it's not a wellness center. It's where people go to be forgotten. Tell us about the patients, Lena said gently. Most of them are from wealthy families. Addictions, mental health issues, things that might embarrass their families if they sought normal treatment. They're kept isolated, heavily medicated, cut off from the outside world. The families pay enormous fees for discretion. Was there a woman there, long-term patient in isolation? Amanda's expression changed, fear flickering in her eyes. Jane Doe Shaven. That's what we called her. She's been there since the facility opened, maybe before. Different from the other patients. Separate wing, maximum security, only certain staff allowed access. Did you ever see her? Once. I was covering for another nurse who called in sick. I had to deliver medications to the secure wing. She was in a room at the end of the hall, behind a door with 3 different locks. Amanda's hands shook. When I opened the door, she was just sitting there, staring at the wall. She didn't even turn to look at me. It was like she'd forgotten how to react to people. What did she look like? Older than she should have been. You could tell she'd been beautiful once, but years of medication and isolation had worn her down. Dark hair gone mostly gray. She was thin, too thin. But her eyes, when she finally looked at me, there was something there. Recognition, maybe, or hope, like she'd been waiting for someone to see her. Naomi pulled up a photo of young Evelyn on her phone. Could this be her? Amanda studied the image for a long time. Maybe. It's hard to say. She's changed so much. But the bone structure, the shape of her face, yes. It could be. How do we get to her? You don't. That place is locked down tight. Cameras everywhere, security staff, electronic locks. And everyone who works there knows the Whitmores own it. They're loyal, or scared, or both. There has to be a way. Amanda hesitated, then pulled out a napkin and sketched a rough layout. There's a maintenance entrance on the north side, used for deliveries, trash removal, that kind of thing. It's less monitored than the main entrance. If you could get in that way, you'd still need to bypass the internal security to reach the secure wing. What about your access codes? Will they still work? I doubt it. I've been gone 2 years. But the system is old, probably hasn't been updated. Standard 6-digit codes. The staff codes all follow a pattern based on hire dates. She wrote down a series of numbers. Try these. Worst case, they don't work, and you set off an alarm. Best case. Best case, you get in, confirm Jane Doe 7 is Evelyn Whitmore, and get out before security realizes you were there. Then you bring the cavalry. They spent the evening planning. Lena made copies of everything they'd collected and sent them to 5 different journalists she trusted, with instructions to publish if anything happened to her. She called her editor and told him there was a massive story coming, to be ready. She even recorded a video explaining everything they discovered, uploaded it to a private server with a dead man switch. If I don't check in every 12 hours, Lena said, The video goes public automatically. Insurance. Naomi called Mrs. Patterson. The hospice nurse answered, said Mrs. Patterson was sleeping, deteriorating. Naomi almost told the nurse everything. Almost said she was doing something dangerous and might not come back. But instead, she just said, "Tell her I love her. Tell her I'm doing something that matters." They drove to Mountain View Wellness Center after dark. The facility sat in a valley, surrounded by pine forest, accessible only by a single winding road. Lights blazed from the windows, making it look almost welcoming from a distance. Up close, Naomi could see the truth. Cameras on every corner, high fences, the architecture of control disguised as care. They parked a mile away and approached on foot, using the tree line for cover. The maintenance entrance was exactly where Amanda had indicated, a plain steel door with a numeric keypad. Lena tried the first code Amanda had given them. Red light. Access denied. She tried the second, the third. On the fourth attempt, the light turned green and the lock clicked open. "We're in," Lena breathed. They entered what appeared to be a loading area. Empty corridors, dim lighting, the smell of industrial cleaner. Following Amanda's sketched map, they moved deeper into the facility, every footstep echoing too loud. The main patient areas were to their left, but they needed the secure wing on the east side. They passed common rooms where a few patients sat in medicated stupors, staring at television screens. No one looked up. No one seemed to register their presence. The secure wing entrance required another code. Lena tried the sequence Amanda had given them. Green light. The door opened with a soft hiss. Inside was different, quieter, colder. The corridor was lined with heavy doors, each marked only with numbers. Cameras in every corner. Naomi felt exposed, waiting for alarms to sound, for security to come running. Room 7 was at the end of the hall. 3 locks, just as Amanda had described. The keypad codes worked on the first 2. The third was mechanical, requiring an actual key. "We can't get through," Naomi whispered. Lena pulled out a small toolkit. "We could try to pick it, but it'll take time." "We don't have time." A sound from behind one of the other doors. A voice, weak and hoarse. "Who's there?" Naomi froze. The voice came from room 7. Someone was listening. "We're looking for someone," Naomi said quietly, moving closer to the door. "A woman who was brought here from Riverdale Care Center in 2003. Silence. Then Riverdale. "I haven't heard that name in years." "Are you Evelyn Whitmore?" Another long pause. "I was. Once. I don't know who I am anymore." Naomi's eyes filled with tears. "We know what happened to you. We know what your family did. We have proof. We're going to get you out." "No." The voice was stronger now. "No. You need to leave. If they find you here, you'll disappear too. They can't know anyone's looking for me. We can't just leave you. Listen to me. My son, he's been trying to protect me. Daniel. He's on the inside, gathering evidence. If you bring the authorities now, before everything's in place, Richard will destroy it all. He's done it before. Daniel is your son?" Naomi felt the pieces clicking into place. "He gave us the security footage. He's been working for years to build a case. Working with a federal prosecutor who can't be bought. They're close, so close. But if you force their hand now, Richard will shut it all down, and I'll never be free." Lena was filming everything, recording the conversation. "Evelyn, if we can't get you out now, how do we know you'll survive long enough for Daniel's plan? I've survived 26 years. I could survive a little longer. But you need to help Daniel finish this. Not by raiding this facility, but by getting the evidence to his prosecutor. Her name is Catherine Reynolds. She's with the federal district in New York. Tell her Daniel sent you. Tell her it's time. How do we know you're really Evelyn? The necklace you're wearing. I gave it to a nurse named Clara Miles the night they took me. I told her if my baby survived, she should give it to someone who'd never be found. Someone outside the system. Someone who could stay invisible until the time was right." A pause. "You're not my daughter, are you?" "No, but I've been protecting your necklace my whole life without knowing it." Then maybe that was the plan all along. Clara was smarter than any of us. She knew I'd need someone who couldn't be connected to me. Someone who could move freely without Richard knowing to watch them. Footsteps echoed in the main corridor. Security making rounds. Lena grabbed Naomi's arm. "We have to go. Now. Don't come back." Evelyn said through the door. Finish this the right way. Free all of us, not just me. They ran, retracing their steps, hearing voices behind them calling out. Someone had noticed the security breaches. Alarms began to wail as they reached the maintenance entrance. They burst out into the night air and sprinted for the trees. Behind them, lights flooded the facility grounds. Men with flashlights fanned out, searching. But Naomi and Lena had a head start in the darkness to hide them. They made it to the car, threw themselves inside, and Lena drove without headlights until they were miles away. Only then did they breathe, did they let themselves believe they'd actually made it out. We found her, Naomi said, still shaking. She's alive, and she's been protecting us this whole time. Daniel, the evidence, the prosecutor. It's in a long game. So what do? We go to New York. We find Catherine Reynolds, and we give her everything we have. Lena looked at Naomi. But you understand what happens next, right? Once we hand this over, it's out of our control. Federal investigations take time. Evelyn might wait months in that facility before they can move. She's waited 26 years. She's telling us to do it right, not fast. So that's what we do. They drove through the night, taking turns at the wheel, making calls to arrange meetings. By the time they reached New York 2 days later, everything was in motion. Catherine Reynolds, the federal prosecutor, met them in a secure office with the kind of recording equipment that suggested she'd been expecting them. Daniel Whitmore has been feeding me information for 3 years, Catherine said, reviewing the evidence they brought. But he's been limited in what he can access without tipping off his father. What you've gathered, the facility records, the security footage, Thomas Wright's testimony, this changes everything. How long until you can act? I can have warrants within a week. We'll hit every Whitmore Foundation facility simultaneously, secure all records, interview all patients. Richard Whitmore and everyone involved in this will face federal charges. Kidnapping, false imprisonment, conspiracy, racketeering. We're talking decades in prison. And Evelyn, the moment we execute the warrants, she'll be freed and protected. Medical care, psychological support, everything she needs. Catherine looked at Naomi. You've done something remarkable here. You've exposed a criminal organization that's been operating in plain sight for decades. I just wore the right necklace. A week later, federal agents raided 17 Whitmore Foundation facilities across the country. They freed 43 people who'd been held against their will, some for years. They seized millions of documents proving a pattern of criminal activity stretching back 30 years. And they arrested Richard Whitmore as he tried to board a private plane to a country with no extradition treaty. Margaret Whitmore held a press conference. She stood before the cameras, no longer the untouchable billionaire, but a mother finally telling the truth. I failed my daughter. I chose reputation over her safety, wealth over her freedom. For 26 years, I let my son imprison her rather than face the truth about our family. I'm cooperating fully with federal investigators, and I'm dismantling the foundation that was used as a cover for these crimes. She looked directly into the camera, and to the young woman who wore my daughter's necklace, who refused to give up when everyone else had. Thank you. You gave me back what I thought I'd lost forever. The chance to be a real mother, even if it's too late to undo the harm. Naomi watched the press conference from Lena's apartment. She touched the necklace one last time, then unclasped it. Its job was done. Evelyn was free. The truth was out. The necklace had traveled from a desperate mother to a brave nurse, to an invisible girl who'd become visible at exactly the right moment. She placed it in a small box, ready to return it to its rightful owner when the time came. 3 weeks after the federal raids that freed 43 people, Naomi stood outside a private medical facility in upstate New York. Not a prison this time, but a real treatment center where Evelyn Whitmore was finally receiving the care she should have had 26 long years ago. The building was small, discreet, peaceful, surrounded by gardens instead of fences. Windows instead of bars. Daniel met her at the entrance. He looked exhausted, older than his years, but there was relief in his eyes that hadn't been there before. Thank you for coming, he said. She's been asking to meet you. How is she? Better than I expected, worse than I hoped. 26 years of psychiatric medication and isolation did damage that can't be undone quickly. But she's lucid, she's present, and she's furious, which the doctors say is actually a good sign. They walked through corridors that smelled of fresh paint and flowers instead of disinfectant and despair. Daniel explained that Evelyn had been in and out of awareness for the first week, her body adjusting to the absence of the drugs that had kept her compliant for so long. But as the fog cleared, her mind had started to reassert itself. She remembers everything, Daniel said quietly. Every day, every injustice. She's working with prosecutors to provide testimony, naming names, identifying people who were complicit. My father's legal team is trying to claim she's not mentally competent to testify, but the medical evaluations prove otherwise. And you? How are you handling all this? Daniel stopped walking. I spent my whole life thinking my father was a ruthless businessman, but fundamentally good. Finding out he's a monster who imprisoned his own sister for decades, that he built his empire on the suffering of vulnerable people, that he tried to have my mother disappeared. I don't know how to process that. Your mother. Evelyn is my mother. Richard never wanted anyone to know. He told everyone I was adopted, that my biological parents died when I was young. But the truth is Clara Miles smuggled me out of Riverdale the same night she took the necklace. She brought me to Richard and told him if he didn't raise me as his own, she'd go public with everything. He agreed, but only because he thought keeping me close gave him leverage over my mother. Did Evelyn know you were alive? Not for years. They told her I was stillborn. It wasn't until I was 16 and started asking questions about my adoption that I found medical records that didn't match the story. I've spent the last decade trying to find her, trying to build a case strong enough that Richard couldn't make it disappear. They reached a sunroom where a woman sat in a chair by the window, staring out at the gardens. She was thin, her dark hair streaked with gray, her face marked by time and suffering. But when she turned to look at them, Naomi saw intelligence in her eyes, a fierce awareness that decades of drugs hadn't managed to extinguish. You must be Naomi, Evelyn said. Her voice was hoarse from years of disuse, but steady. There was a strength in it that surprised Naomi. Ms. Whitmore, Evelyn, please. I've been called Patient 847 and Jane Doe 7 for so long. I've forgotten what it felt like to hear my actual name. Hearing people say it now feels like reclaiming a piece of myself I thought was lost forever. She gestured to a chair. Seat. Daniel, give us a few minutes alone. Daniel hesitated, protective instincts clearly warring with respect for his mother's wishes. He nodded and left, closing the door softly behind him. Naomi sat, very aware of the necklace in her pocket. She'd brought it to return it to its rightful owner, to complete the circle that had begun 26 years ago. You're not what I expected, Evelyn said, studying her with an intensity that made Naomi feel both exposed and understood. When Clara told me she'd found someone to protect the necklace, someone who could move through the world invisible to my family, I pictured someone older, more hardened by life. But you're just a girl who survived what should have broken you. I'm 24, the same age I was when they took me. When they stole my life, my freedom, my son. I was so young, so naive. I thought truth and justice were enough. I didn't understand that power could simply erase inconvenient truths. Evelyn's expression softened with something that looked like recognition. But you understood that from the beginning, didn't you? Growing up in the system taught you that the world isn't fair, that the powerful don't play by the same rules. I learned to stay invisible, to not make waves, to accept that I didn't matter. And yet when it mattered most, you chose to become visible. You chose to make waves that became a tsunami. That takes courage most people never find. She gave me the only evidence of what happened to you. She gave you more than that. She gave you a purpose, even if you didn't know it yet. That necklace kept you safe because anyone looking at you would just see a poor girl with a piece of costume jewelry. But it also marked you, connected you to this story in a way that would eventually matter. Naomi pulled the necklace from her pocket. I brought it back. It belongs to you. Evelyn stared at it for a long moment, then shook her head. No, it belongs to you now. I wore it for less than a year. You've carried it for a lifetime. Besides, I don't need it anymore. I have something better. What's that? The truth. My voice. My testimony. Richard thought he could erase me, make me disappear into a system where no one would ever look. But you and that journalist, you found me. You exposed everything. And now I get to watch him face consequences for what he did. I'm sorry it took so long. Don't be. If you found me 5 years ago, 10 years ago, Daniel wouldn't have been in position to build the case properly. Richard would have destroyed evidence, intimidated witnesses, used his connections to make it all disappear. But you found me at exactly the right time, when all the pieces were in place. Evelyn leaned forward. Do you believe in fate, Naomi? I don't know. I used to think I was just unlucky, abandoned, forgotten. But now I wonder if everything happened for a reason. Clara believed in patterns. She said the universe has a way of correcting injustices, but it needs people willing to be part of the correction. You were willing, even when it was dangerous, even when you had every reason to walk away. You kept going. That's not fate. That's courage. They talked for another hour. Evelyn asked about Naomi's life, her time in foster care, the struggles she'd faced. She listened with an intensity that made Naomi feel truly seen for the first time in her life. And in return, Evelyn shared fragments of what she'd endured, not the horror of it, but the small acts of resistance that had kept her sane. I counted days, Evelyn said. Scratched marks on the wall where the cameras couldn't see. I remembered poetry, entire books I'd read, recited them to myself to prove my mind still worked. And I thought about my son, hoped he was alive somewhere, hoped he was safe. That hope kept me breathing when I wanted to give up. When Daniel returned, Evelyn embraced him with a fierceness that spoke of years of separation. My brilliant boy, you saved me. We all save each other, Daniel said. As Naomi prepared to leave, Evelyn took her hand. What will you do now? Go back to your life. I don't think I can. My life was waiting tables and surviving. Everything that happened, it changed me. I want to do something that matters. Then do it. Use your story. Use what you learned. There are other people out there, trapped in systems that make them invisible, that let powerful people abuse them without consequences. Be the person who sees them. Be the person who refuses to look away. Naomi left the facility with a necklace still in her pocket and a sense of purpose she'd never had before. She met Lena at a coffee shop downtown. How did it go? Lena asked. She's remarkable, broken in some ways, but stronger than anyone I've ever met. The trial starts next month. Are you ready to testify? I think so. What about you? How's the book coming? Lena smiled. The publisher wants it fast-tracked. They're calling it the story of the decade. Clara Miles, the nurse who outsmarted a billionaire family. Evelyn Whitmore, the whistleblower who spent 26 years in captivity. And you, the girl who wore the evidence without knowing it. I'm not sure I'm comfortable being part of the story. You are the story, Naomi. You're the reason any of this came to light. Own it. 6 months later, Richard Whitmore was convicted on 17 federal charges, including kidnapping, false imprisonment, conspiracy to commit fraud, and racketeering. The trial had been a media spectacle unlike anything the country had seen in years. Every sordid detail of the Whitmore Foundation's criminal network exposed to public scrutiny. Reporters packed the courtroom daily. Cameras captured Richard's increasingly desperate attempts to maintain his composure as witness after witness testified against him. Evelyn's testimony had been the most damaging. For 3 days, she'd sat in the witness box and methodically detailed her imprisonment. She described the drugs that kept her compliant, the isolation that nearly broke her mind, the constant fear that she'd never see the sun again. Richard's lawyers tried to discredit her, claiming decades of psychiatric medication had made her unreliable. But the medical records, the facility documents, and Thomas Wright's security footage painted an undeniable picture of systematic abuse. Richard maintained his innocence throughout, his face a mask of wounded dignity. He claimed he'd been protecting vulnerable family members, acting in their best interests, making difficult decisions that others didn't have the courage to make. His voice never wavered. His eyes never showed remorse. He truly believed he'd done nothing wrong, that power gave him the right to control other people's lives. The jury didn't believe him. They deliberated for less than 6 hours. He was sentenced to 45 years in federal prison without the possibility of parole. His assets were seized to compensate victims and fund restitution. The Whitmore empire, built over 3 generations through shrewd business and ruthless ambition, crumbled in a matter of months. Properties sold at auction. Stocks plummeted. The foundation was dissolved, its remaining legitimate operations transferred to independent oversight. Margaret Whitmore stood at the sentencing, her face pale but composed. When the judge asked if she had anything to say, she stood. I enabled this. I chose silence over truth, reputation over justice. I abandoned my daughter when she needed me most, and I allowed my son to become a monster because I was too afraid to confront what our family had become. I'm cooperating fully with investigators to identify every person who was harmed, and I'm establishing a foundation, a real one this time, to provide support for survivors of illegal imprisonment and systemic abuse. It won't undo what was done, but it's a start. The judge acknowledged her statement and moved on. But afterward, in the courthouse hallway, Margaret approached Naomi. I know I have no right to ask anything of you, Margaret said, but I want you to know that I'm setting aside funds for you, not as payment or apology, but because you deserved better than what the system gave you. You deserved a family, stability, opportunity. This won't replace that, but it might give you a foundation to build from. I don't want your money, Margaret. It's not my money. It's yours. It always should have been. Clara Miles trusted you with the truth. Let me trust you with the means to do something with it. Naomi thought about refusing, but she thought about Mrs. Patterson, who died a week after the arrests, finally able to rest knowing Naomi had found her purpose. She thought about all the other kids in foster care, aging out of the system with nothing, invisible to a world that should have protected them. I'll take it, Naomi said, but only if I can use it to help others like me. That's exactly what I hoped you'd say. 3 months later, Naomi stood outside a small community center in her old neighborhood. The building had been renovated, transformed from an abandoned warehouse into a space designed to serve foster youth. Job training, educational support, counseling, housing assistance. All the things Naomi had desperately needed and never received. The plaque beside the entrance read, "The Clara Miles Initiative for the Children No System Protects." Lena arrived with her camera, documenting the opening. Evelyn came too, still healing but determined to be present. Daniel stood beside his mother, protective and proud. Even Margaret attended, staying in the background but watching with something like hope in her eyes. Naomi addressed the small crowd that had gathered. Former foster youth, social workers, community leaders, journalists. I spent most of my life feeling invisible, she said. The system saw me as a number, a case file, a problem to be managed. I had a necklace that I thought was worthless, just a piece of metal and stone. But it turned out to be the key to exposing one of the largest criminal conspiracies in the country. Not because the necklace itself was valuable, but because someone saw me as worthy of protecting. Clara Miles, a nurse who risked everything, looked at a baby in the system and decided that baby mattered. That baby was me. Her voice strengthened. This center exists because Clara believed invisible people could become visible if someone was willing to look. It exists because Evelyn Whitmore refused to let 26 years of imprisonment break her spirit. It exists because a journalist named Lena Brooks spent years chasing a story everyone else had forgotten. And it exists because sometimes the truth needs someone who has nothing to lose and everything to gain to bring it into the light. She paused, touching her throat where the necklace no longer hung. I'm not wearing the necklace today. I put it in a memorial case inside this building, along with Clara's photo and story. Because the necklace's journey is complete. It traveled from a mother to a daughter, from a daughter to a nurse, from a nurse to a child, from a child to a woman who finally understood what it meant. It meant that no one should be invisible, that everyone deserves to be seen, that truth matters more than power. The crowd applauded. Afterward, people approached with stories of their own, young people who'd aged out of foster care and were struggling, social workers who'd been fighting a broken system for years, families who'd been torn apart by institutions that prioritize bureaucracy over humanity. Naomi listened to all of them, taking notes, making connections, building networks. This was her purpose now. Not waiting tables, not surviving day to day, but fighting for people who reminded her of who she used to be. As the sun set, Evelyn approached her. "You've built something beautiful here. We built it. All of us." Clara would be proud. She saved 2 lives the night she took that necklace. Mine, by preserving evidence that would eventually free me. And yours, by giving you a purpose you'd spend your whole life growing into. Do you think she knew? That would all led here. Evelyn smiled, the first genuine smile Naomi had seen from her. I think Clara understood something most people don't. That small acts of courage, done by ordinary people, can change everything. She was a nurse, not a hero. But she chose to be brave at a moment when it mattered. Just like you did. That night, Naomi returned to the center after everyone had left. She stood in front of the memorial case, looking at the necklace displayed beside Clara's photo. The pendant caught the light, the aquamarine stone still beautiful after all these years. Beside Clara's photo was a new addition. A photo of patient 847, Evelyn Whitmore, staring at the camera with haunted but defiant eyes. And next to that, a photo of Naomi herself, taken the day Margaret first embraced her at the restaurant. 3 women connected across time by a piece of jewelry and a commitment to truth. Naomi touched the glass. "Thank you, Clara, for seeing me when no one else did, for trusting me with something bigger than both of us, for teaching me that being invisible isn't the same as being powerless." She turned and walked toward the door, toward her new life, toward a future she was finally ready to claim. Behind her, the necklace remained in its case, its journey complete, its purpose fulfilled. The children no system protects now had a champion. The invisible now had a voice. And the truth, buried for 26 years beneath wealth and power and fear, had finally come to light. Naomi stepped out into the night, no longer invisible, no longer powerless. Just a young woman who'd worn a necklace without knowing its weight, and in doing so, had helped free not just one person, but dozens. Not just Evelyn, but herself. The door closed behind her with a soft click. Inside, the necklace remained, forever preserved, forever remembered. A reminder that justice delayed is not justice denied, as long as someone refuses to stop looking. And Naomi Carter had never stopped looking. If you discovered tomorrow that your entire existence was connected to someone else's buried truth, would you have the courage to uncover it, even if it cost you everything you thought you knew? If this story moved you, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories about ordinary people who refuse to stay invisible.